Hey, how's it going, everyone? My name is Jordan Kula. So, I'm in this Live Like Philosopher course at Wesleyan University in Connecticut. And for our final project, we were tasked to make a weekly or a daily um, video diary for a week to live like one of the philosophers that we discussed throughout the semester. So, I decided to take on Stoicism. So I'm going to be This is going to be a video diary of my journey of trying to live like a Stoic. So this is day one of living like a Stoic, and today our focus was on life, reflecting on um, how we came to be, tracing back our course and of events that we've gone through throughout our lives that have led us to where we are today. And there was kind of three main questions that we were asked to focus on. The first being, what roles do we have in our life, and how have you been led to the position you now occupy? Um, so this was a very powerful and great, and deep, task to dive into, especially all the due to all the experiences and challenges that I've had throughout my life to various things, and how that has led me. Every single one of those things has led me to be a student here at Wesleyan. Yeah, it's kind of crazy how it all worked out. Um, I would have never thought, you know, when I was 17 in high school as a senior, that any of this would have been possible. Um, it's crazy because that's 10 years ago. That would have been 10 years. A lot has happened. Um, I dropped out of college that following fall, and that led me to join the military. So I'm a veteran. I was in the U.S. Army for 4 years. I have a son to a mother, a father, and a stepdad. A brother to a twin brother and a little sister. I'm a cousin to a vast family network. I'm a friend to people all around the country and all around the world due to experiences within the military and outside the military, which is really, really cool to say and think about. Um, I'm a veteran, or again, as I said earlier, I'm a veteran. Um, Due to various courses that I've been through or programs that I've been through, I can now say that I am a warrior scholar and a posse scholar. I'm also a program ambassador for the Warrior Scholar Project and the Posse Veterans Program. Um, I'm a community organizer. I'm a Relay for Life team captain, fighting for cancer awareness and funds. I am, as of the summer, going into the summer, I am a congressional intern for Congresswoman Grace Napolitano. I am a Asian Pacific American representative as a Cause Leadership Academy intern in Pasadena, California. And all this has led me to be a student at Wesleyan. And it's crazy that through all of these different titles and roles and ups and downs and pitfalls and failures has led me to be a student here at Wesleyan. Across the country, from home. I never even knew Wesleyan existed or what it would be like to live in the Northeast, but here I am. And it's a crazy experience to think about and reflect on that journey and how that all came into being. The second question was, what are the qualities and character strengths you admire in others that have guided you in your life's journey? So I thought this was interesting in how it was phrased, because it was just focusing on the qualities and character strengths in others. But for me, one thing that I found important is not just to focus on strengths, but the failures and weaknesses of others as well. Taking on lessons from those that I admire, as well as those who I view as being bad leaders or bad influences on others, because you can learn from both. You can grow from both. You can I've gained qualities and viewpoints from both. But, sticking to the good qualities and people that have helped me along the way, the no-brainer first one would have to be my grandma, Nana. She was very influential in my upbringing as a child, because for a while my mom was a single mother, and so she was at work and my grandma would take care of my brother and I. So during that time and throughout my life, leading into my early adulthood, she taught me a lot. She taught me the importance of family. She taught me the importance of loyalty. She taught me the importance of putting other people's happiness above your own. She taught me the importance, how to love the ocean, the water, nature, how to appreciate the small things in life, and doing our best to live every day and appreciating everything, or finding something to appreciate in every moment. From my mom, this is more recently, now that, all of the kids, all of us, all three of us are out of the house, she's finally had the time to take the time, her life was pretty much dedicated towards us, reflecting on us, taking us to different events, making sure that, we did our homework during high school, and, below, making sure that we were fed, that the house was clean, everything that an amazing mom does. She, her life revolved around us, and it was really great to see her take the time to self-nurture and grow and find new interests and goals now. And it really helped instill in me the importance of taking the time throughout my life to make sure that I'm okay, that I'm not just continuously putting others above myself, even though that is a great quality to have. You just can't do it all the time. You have to make sure that you are okay so that you therefore can help others. And I definitely contribute that lesson to my mom the most. My stepdad really taught me the importance of financial planning. He is a financial advisor. It was just interesting because even though he would guide me and tell me the best practices of financial planning throughout my life, I often went against it until I made my own mistakes. Until I did it, and then I would be like, "Oh yeah, you were right." But I'm glad he's always been there to help guide me. My dad, he taught me when he was going through cancer. Um, he taught me the importance of forgiveness, the importance of family, the importance of being resilient and courageous in front of, while facing incredible odds. Um, the third question was to recall the two strands of the Stoic way of life that you've considered in your exercise today. So those two strands were the idea that a human life, if lived properly, is an ongoing project or journey directed towards best possible human condition, which is wisdom in the Stoic view. And the second strand concerns our relations with other people and how we develop and deepen or extend our instinct of care to our family, to our friends, our community, our country, our world, and how that has developed over time and throughout our lives. So for me, I think the core group of family has been important since and really powerful and reflective in my life since my childhood, and still sticks with me today. But reflecting on everything, I can definitely see how my influence or sphere of care or area that I want to help has expanded greatly over time, past my family members, past my friends. Being a veteran, I feel a great connection and want to continuously serve my fellow vets, my fellow military personnel and family members, because I know it's not always easy. It's not the easiest job in the world, and I want to make an impact to help as much as I can. From that experience and being involved in having opportunities to go to Washington, D.C. and advocate for issues and see how politics really works and how people, even small groups of people, can make huge changes that influence millions of people was really powerful, and it got me interested and got me to consider what my real work of being a human being is, to ensure that others have a better life than I did and a better experience and transition through life than I did. So for me, that's focusing on the veteran community, the military family community, and recently, and it's also expanded to the Asian Pacific American community. Even though I have ethnically, I have been part of this group since since I was born, but I haven't really considered myself to be part of this group until recently, or of a way to contribute back to this group until very recently. So to see this expansion of just broadening beyond just the veteran group to this whole new group has been very eye-opening. It's been a really cool journey the past 2 months. I can't wait for this summer to actually put those, to actually do things that help that community through my internship with the Cause Leadership Academy and being an intern with Congresswoman Grace Napolitano. And I really look forward to that. Um, so I think for me, that kind of has led me to want to go into politics as well after school. So this wraps up day one. Hi, welcome to day two of Living Like a Stoic. So today our focus is on control. Stoics really saw the importance of trying to realize and separate what, of the things that we can control and things that we don't have control over, things that we leave to wishful thinking, and learning how to face those. So again, there were five questions that we were asked to focus on today. So the first was being, how does distinguishing between what is and is not under your control help you live a better life? So for me, like, one thing that was very important, and one thing I learned through multiple experiences and through this reflection, is that, just being able to distinguish what we do have control and what we don't have control over, really has a huge effect on me personally, on my anxiety, my stress, sometimes depression and grief, and really my outlook on life. Like, really taking the time to distinguish those things helps me get through certain situations, and realize sometimes that, I can build situations up in my head that I make it, to myself, I make it seem like it's this huge event that, I completely failed. There's no way I can rebuild or change or grow from this, until the moment happens. Whether, for me, a lot of this time this happens, I have the most immediate impact on reflecting and trying to distinguish these things when I'm at the beach, or I'm up on a mountain, looking at a town or something that, makes it look small. It helps me put things in perspective, and realizing, in separating those two things, these two categories and groups, is really important for me on, again, like I said, overall stress, and reflecting on how things impact me in the future. Situations like that happen to me in the future. The second question was, do you agree with the Stoics that the only thing that is ultimately under your control is your virtue? And for the most part, I think so. In the sense that we can only really ensure that we can do the best that we can. We could try to be the best person that we can be, the nicest person that we can be, the most impactful and helpful person to society, to the people around us we can be, but we really don't have any control over how other people perceive us. It's up to them. Like, we can do our best, but we ultimately can't force someone to view us a certain way. I guess the same goes for, like, applying for jobs. That was another thing that came to mind. We could do everything that we can do to make ourselves the best applicants for a position, through certificates that we have, degrees we have earned, connections we've made, skill sets, how we act during the interview process, how we do on our application, our reference letters. But it's not really ultimately, it's not really our choice if we are selected or not. It's either the HR person or the hiring committee, the boss, that makes those decisions. And we can only present the best of us that we can, and the best virtues of us that we can. But we don't really, ultimately, we don't really have the final say or influence on anything else. The third question was, do you agree with the Stoics that the only thing that is ultimately valuable is your virtue? So this is where I kind of had issues with this section. I don't really think I would say our virtue is the only thing that is of ultimate value. For me, there are a lot of other things that aren't considered virtues per se, that I consider like hugely valuable in my life, and the most obvious to me is family. Family is hugely important, and it has been from a very young age, and a huge influence in my life. So to say that that's not valuable or ultimately valuable is kind of hard for me to embrace. The final question was, how might the Stoics' views help us respond to failure or disappointment in our life? Like I said earlier, being able to distinguish, what we had control over and what we didn't have control over, and how those different things influenced our failure or a disappointment, really helps with the growing process and the learning process from any given situation. So realizing the things that we can control, and finding out what those are in any given situation allows us to go back and change and grow and develop those things for next time, to help ensure that the next time it's a success instead of a failure, instead of a disappointment, and it's a celebration. And realizing, not being able to distinguish those two things is really hard sometimes, especially right after a big failure or a big disappointment. And it's really hard, especially for me, to get out of the rut, because I constantly I tend to think about the things I can't change, or I couldn't change, or I didn't have control over. And when you really think about it and really realize that if you can't control them, then why do you spend so much time stressing about them? It really helps with the growing process. So again, this is day 2 with the topic of control. Hey, how's it going? And welcome back for day 3 of Living Like a Stoic. So today we were asked to focus on mindfulness, specifically Stoic mindfulness. And that differs from what we typically think of mindfulness today, which tends to kind of be influenced by Buddhist thought. So with the Stoics, I really found in their way of thinking of mindfulness, I really found this section of the week the hardest to reflect on or deal with so far. Maybe it's that I need to practice it more, or try and deal with these things more. I mean, I somewhat agree with it, but on certain things, it's really hard for me to put them into practice. for example, I could really see the Stoics' view on mindfulness working, taking the time to let a situation happen, not respond to it immediately, walk away, come back to it, and address it later. When it comes to emotions such as anger or sadness or being upset, when it comes to an argument or a debate or something like that, I definitely see that being effective. Where I don't see it being effective for me, and maybe I'm just applying it to the wrong situations or ideas or thoughts, is things like the loss of loved ones or certain tragic events that have happened throughout someone's life, that may have happened throughout someone's life. I kind of felt it harder to apply these ways of thinking to situations like that. So the first question being, how helpful do you find the Stoics' mindfulness techniques in overcoming negative emotions? For me, it really depends on what negative emotions you're talking about, or what we are talking about. And then going on to the next one, were you able to today to get enough psychological distance on your thoughts to assess them wisely? Some situations I was, but other situations I just wasn't able to. Even though it's been a few years trying to, when thinking about my father and him dealing with cancer and everything that went with that, him passing away, it immediately brought negative emotions, thoughts to the forefront, and through my experience of trying to deal with that and trying to apply, I have been applying these practices of stoicism and trying to step back, wait until a later date to deal with them, to deal with those emotions as a way of dealing with a situation. I have this situation in very particular. I have been. This is the way I try to deal with it. But what I found as a result wasn't that I was able to address those feelings and emotions later, but rather that they didn't come up as often, but when they do, they come up very very strong, very intense, and they still do. So it's kind of an interesting thing. It helps in a way that I don't think about it as often, but it doesn't help in a way that when they do come in, that it's intense, because I haven't dealt with it, because I haven't thought about it, because I haven't assessed it, because when it does come around, the intensity just makes me back off and want to push it off to later. And so I don't really think that situations like that, this way of dealing with emotions, being mindful, isn't really the best way to deal with it. I often think about if I took the time at the very beginning to grieve and deal with all the emotions and situations that were connected with that situation, I wouldn't have such intense feelings as I do now. But I don't know. Maybe I'm approaching this day wrong. What virtues do you possess by nature to respond to difficult situations and life challenges? I mean, I think I understand what this is getting at. I'm guessing from the readings that it's talking about so it's by nature. So virtues that I naturally have. I guess patience would probably be the biggest one. Understanding, being able to put my empathy, being able to put myself in other shoes. Are virtues that have helped me deal with mindfulness in situations and emotions in certain situations. But then, like I said, in other situations, those same virtues have caused more emotions, more negative emotions, more intensity, more a push of those feelings to the back burner just for them to come up later. But yeah, so this is day 3, mindfulness. Didn't really like this one, to be honest. I don't know. Maybe I'm just approaching this day wrong. Hey, how's it going? And welcome to day 4 of Living Like a Stoic. So today the focus was on nature. So I thought, what better way to do this than go mobile and head out to the river. So today we had 4 questions that we were asked to focus on. The first being, does reflecting on your place in the vastness of nature give you a better perspective on your life? So with the Stoics, they promoted the viewpoint of trying to have the viewpoint of like the cosmic view of the world, of nature, and your place within it. For me, I totally agree with it. I view it as very beneficial for me to be able to like sit back and put everything that I'm going through into perspective. Like I said, I think it was yesterday, talking about for me how nature and going out to nature and using nature as a tool to expand my view, to get to the point of putting everything in that cosmic perspective, is very useful to me. It helps me put my life into perspective and challenges, think of them less than what they help me realize that they're less than what I had built up in my head. An issue I have with this mindset, and a challenge I have, still to meet the Stoic viewpoint is, Marcus states that
you shouldn't have to go on retreat into the woods, into the country, to be able to reach this perspective. You should be able to have the mindset to just reach into your own mind and your own ideas to get to that point. And I still have problems with that. I still have challenges with being able to just do that on the whim. It's really hard for me to keep that mindset every day with, it's so easy to get caught up in the daily trudges and busyness of everyday life, that it's really hard for me to keep that mindset going. The second question is, does regarding yourself as one of the countless creatures in the natural world draw you closer to other human beings and to nature generally? I think it does. For me, it does, because that it helps me realize that we're all part of the same. We're all part of the same group, trying to live our lives on this planet we call Earth and home. That it's not just that the choices that we make in everyday life don't just affect us, but affect everyone around us, the world, someone on the other side of the world, different species, different animals. And so it helps, tie everything together and helps me reevaluate my life choices to reflect that what my choices are don't just affect me, but could possibly affect the entire world. The third question is, how applicable do you find the Stoics' views on nature and living the good life? Like I've been saying, I think it's very applicable. Again, it's just hard to constantly keep that applicable. I think with practice, definitely you could. Trying to apply it every day, taking the time out of every day to do it, and slowly weaning off relying on going to nature to get into that perspective, and just being able to dive into your mind and your own thought process to get to that viewpoint is definitely possible, as long as you dedicate time towards it. And that's the key part. The fourth and final question is, do we need to have a providential view of nature to benefit from the kind of ethical development the Stoics promote? So from our discussions in class of what providential means and what necessarily the Stoics' viewpoint on that is that providential meant that there was like a divine influence. For me, I don't really see the need of a divine influence for us for us to have a view of nature that benefits, everything. I think we can kind of just do that on our own and seeing our relationship with others and putting our place in it. Again, this is day 4 on nature. Thanks for joining us. See you tomorrow.
Welcome back to day 5 of Living Like Stoic. Today we had the assignment of focusing on being resilient. So the Stoics believe that the best way to, mitigate negative responses to a situation, to a catastrophe, was by pretty much exposing yourself to it beforehand, or the thought of that situation beforehand, so that as you could control your emotional response to that situation when it did end up happening. So as I was on day 3, I think it was, I also had difficulty at first for this section, because of certain situations that happen to go on in my life. I try to focus on certain ones, but they just seem to be too much, too much. So I decided to try and figure something else that wasn't quite as profound or deep. Um, so I shifted gears. So the first question or our task was to, for about 20 or 30 minutes to think about a specific event, a catastrophic event that we could think of, and just think about it and use or the tools that we've learned throughout the week about picking apart the situation, what we control, what we can't control, things like that to help and note when we realize that our emotions abate or go away. So for me, so the first question says, does preparing yourself emotionally for worst case scenarios in the future decrease your level of anxiety about these adverse events? So the event I was focusing on was failing a class, which is pretty intense and a big deal. Grades are such a GPA are such a big standard set by ourselves as college students, and by it affects internships, grad school opportunities, scholarships. So grades are super important, but I really like doing this exercise for that because it helped, especially the control and not able to control part. It's like one of those things, like, yes, you could have done things before, like while the semester was going on, that you had control over to ensure that you didn't fail that course or receive a bad grade in that course. But since this event has happened, you did fail the course. You can't go back in time and change that. Like, that happened. So it's not in your control to go back and to change the grade. So this opportunity or this style of thinking really helps dissect that, think things over, and realize, pick apart, find the things that you could control within that situation, and know that you could apply that later on so that you don't fail a course again. And using, instead of reflecting on that and on that situation and getting stuck on that situation and letting that emotions build up, you instead use the situation as a learning tool to prevent that from happening again. So in that case, I do think that exposure definitely helps in that scenario. The second thing was, do you think practicing exercises such as the one you conducted today could make you a more resilient person generally in your life? So yeah, like I just said, yes, I think so. The hard part for me would be balancing the time of exposing myself to different scenarios and not allowing myself to go too deep into those reflections, into those dissections, and kind of getting lost in that. So for me, it would have to be like, if I was to apply this to my life, I would have to set aside designated amount of time every day or certain times throughout the week. That's all I'm doing. That's it. That's it. Like, and once that time's up, boom, done. Move on to something else. Try and find something else um, to do, so that my mind isn't just thinking about those things over and over and over again throughout the day. I think that would be very taxing and cause even more stress potentially, because you are constantly thinking about those situations. Um, so the third one was, how does your ethical development as a human being go hand in hand with your emotional development? I mean, kind of like I said before, I do see the Stoics' way of thinking around this topic to make sense. So as we grow ethically, we're able to ensure that we're not ruled by anger or jealousy, or as um, as it says at the beginning of the assignment when you're explaining it, um, that we can have access to the good emotions, instead of, you know, being misguided by rational anger, fear, and envy. Um, I think this is important in learning how to control your emotions and your ethics, growing your ethics, and um, being able to step back from a situation and look at it, and not let your emotions guide what you do. Is very important, especially when you're dealing with others, or going into politics or engaging in conversations. It's very easy to let emotions take over the way the conversation and the way you speak. And um, I think to have a conversation, prevent it, to keep it a conversation, prevent it from going into an argument, you have to have your ethics and build your ethics, and therefore um, building your emotional tool belt, I guess, as well. So yeah, this was day 5. See you tomorrow. Hey, how's it going, everyone? So I actually just came back from spending a couple days away from campus before finals, kind of just to reset, and give myself a break, get away from everything before finals began. But while I was away, I kind of took into an account the way we did in class. So day 6 and day 7 were around the same topic of focusing on relationships, and it was kind of a 2-day activity. So instead of doing 2 different clips, I'm just going to do it in one to cover my reflections on that. So within this portion of Stoicism, I think this is the focusing on relationships and building relationships, and trying to view yourself as a global citizen, expanding your sphere of who you consider family, and who you care about, is what really struck me the most, and kind of stuck with me with this school of thought in particular, and kind of molds pretty well with the way I'm already trying to live my life, but gave me a couple additional pinpoints that I really appreciate, and I think I'll use, or try to use in the future. So for me, one thing that I thought was interesting, so on the first day, it had mentioned talking about the circles of um, Heracles, and how, expanding that circle of family and calling your cousins brother and sister, calling your uncles and aunts mother and father. Well, I never necessarily went that far. Growing up, being born in Hawaii and being exposed to that culture, and spending a little bit of my time there, um, one of the things that carried on for me, and one of the things that really impacts me, and really what I enjoy when going back, is we have this way of thinking where pretty much every woman older than you is auntie, and every male older than you is uncle. So it kind of provides that um, familiarity and broadening of that family even beyond blood. And I can remember I never really realized the impact of that and how that really worked until I was older. And I think I was a teenager when I went back for a summer, and I was talking to a few of my cousins, and I was like, "Oh yeah, um, isn't so and so's our cousin, right?" And they're like, "No," but I'm like, "Well, why have I called this person uncle my entire life?" And they all started laughing at me, and they explained, like, they basically broke everything down for me, and I literally had to go through all the connections I had made, and kind of break them down and try really truly find out who was family, like extended family. Like, I knew all my direct uncles and aunts and cousins. Like, I knew who they were. I knew they were part of my family. I knew how we were connected, blood blood related or through marriage. But I just figured all these people were extended family, like my cousin's cousins, or one of my aunt's sisters, or something along those lines, and their family. And so I really had to take the time to decipher who was and was not blood or marriage related, which is kind of interesting because my whole life I had considered them family, and so I treated them that way. Um, which for me, was just kind of an interesting side note when I was doing this section. Um, so going on to the questions that were presented for this section, the first one was, what are the benefits of seeing yourself as a citizen of the world? So for me, I think there are tons of benefits for thinking this way, and it kind of goes back to when we're talking about nature and taking that cosmic perspective, um, and seeing that we are part of a system, a working system, where we all affect each other, where we all work together, and if we're if we are to make the best of this world and ensure a successful future for our children and our children's children and so on and so forth, that we have to realize that it's everything we do is much bigger than just ourselves, our immediate family, our county or town, or even our country. Every decision that we make really involves the whole world, and has impacts on a lot of people, and the world that we live on in general, and the impact that we have on the environment. Um, so I think taking that perspective of being a citizen of the world, going beyond just being an American or just being a Californian, is a very powerful thing, and it enables you to experience so many different things, and view so many different, take in so many different viewpoints, and have some amazing experiences that you never would have otherwise if you just pigeonholed yourself into one little area, and constantly thinking of yourself a citizen of just that place. So the second question is, how did this change of attitude affect your relations with others generally this weekend? Um, so, unfortunately, because I was away, I didn't really spend time with people per se. Uh, like no, I didn't spend time with friends or students on campus. Um, but one thing that I thought was interesting, I kind of tried to apply this approach of interacting with people in the town I was in. I didn't know anybody. I've never been there before, um, and kind of just walking around and getting to know the area, getting to know the little town, and you know, kind of just engaging with others really helped me explore and see things within the town that I wouldn't have otherwise. So not necessarily, and I think part of that was trying to approach people not as necessarily strangers, but as I don't know, as like people that I could build a relationship with or a network with, um, and kind of just explore. I try to stay away from using my phone, to rely on my phone to find interesting things to do. Um, I kind of just focused on talking to people and finding out what they suggested to go try, which was really cool and it was fun. And I got to try some things that I probably wouldn't have tried otherwise if I was just looking on Google Maps or something. Um, the next one was: do you think approaching everyone with goodwill and good intentions, regardless of their treatment of you, could affect your life for the better? I mean, definitely. I try. I mean, like I said in the beginning, I try and live this way already. Um, and I think it goes back to the very beginning of this week when we were talking about control. This is something that we can control. Trying to be a good person, trying to have good intentions, um, good attitude, a good approach to others is all we can really control. We can't really control how other people are going to respond to us. And it's interesting because I've had a wide range of different responses to this way of living, this openness. Everything from making connections right away with people being very comfortable, making friends, new connections, to people kind of being off put, like like who are you? Um, like this is like being weirded out, and so going back to the control and unable to control parts, like I think it's definitely helpful, because if we just go around with a pessimistic attitude, we're not going to have a good time. We're not going to have a good life. Um, if you're just looking for the bad in others, or thinking people have a bad intent in everything that they do, um, it just sounds draining to me. I don't know how people do it. Um, so for me, I try and keep that attitude of having those good intentions in everything that I do, and looking for or assuming good intentions in others when I'm interacting with them. Sometimes that's coming to bite me in the butt. Spending time and effort to help someone in my past when they just use it and don't reciprocate those favors. But I think in the end, it definitely leads to a better life. Um, so yeah, this wraps up day 6 and 7 on relationships, and it also wraps up the week of Stoicism. I really enjoyed this course. I really enjoyed learning about you know all the different schools of thought, from Callicles to Plato to Socrates, um, you know, to the Neoplatonists, the Stoics, to the Epicureans. It's really interesting and challenging to try and apply all these various thoughts into daily life. I think it really helps stick a lot of the lessons with me, and it will help me remember a lot of these things more as life goes on, and instead of if we just read it, which I think was a really cool aspect of this course. Again, thank you so much, and yeah, later.